Good morning, dear students. Today we shall begin with the seventh part of the chapter Demand. In the previous part, you had studied about shift in demand curve. There were two types of shift, that is rightward shift and leftward shift. And the reason of these shifts were change in the other factors of demand, that is the factors other than the own price of the commodity. So whenever there was a favorable change, it led to rightward shift, and whenever there was an unfavorable change, it led to leftward shift. So the topic for today is cross price effect. This topic is quite you are familiar with it, and today you will learn to apply the knowledge that you had gained in the previous class. So let us begin. Effects of change in price of a related good on the demand for a commodity is called cross price effect. There are two types of related goods, that is substitute goods and complementary goods. So you already know there are two types of goods that are related. The first one is substitute goods, that is the goods that can be used in place of one another, and complementary goods are those goods that are to be used together. So the first one is demand for a commodity in relation to price of the substitute goods. So over here we will be studying about how shift takes place in case of substitute goods. Let us consider tea and coffee as substitute goods. Let it be the commodity demanded for which demand curve is D1. So there is this graph, and over here they have assumed tea and coffee to be substitute goods, and this graph is showing you the data of tea. So increase in price of substitute goods. Initially, if price of tea is OP1, quantity purchased is OT1. Now suppose the price of tea remains constant but the price of coffee increases. As a rational consumer, you may decide to substitute some tea in place of coffee, or you are expected to buy more of tea even when its price is constant. This will lead to a forward shift in demand curve from D1 to D2. So over here they are saying that whenever there is a favorable change, there will be a rightward shift. Over here in case of tea, if the price of tea remains the same and due to other factors, suppose the price of coffee increases, then there will be a favorable change in the demand of tea. More and more number of people will be demanding tea now, and as a result the demand curve will shift from D1 to D2. Now another scenario is there where there is decrease in the price of substitute goods. If price of coffee decreases, you will tend to substitute some coffee in place of tea, or you will demand less tea even when the price is constant. This is a situation of backward shift in demand curve from D1 to D2. So in this case, if the price of coffee decreases, then more and more number of people will start demanding coffee, and their demand for tea is going to decrease, which will lead to leftward shift of demand curve. The quantity demanded will decrease from OT1 to OT2 and demand curve will shift from D1 to D2. Therefore, if X and Y are substitutes and price of X remains constant, demand curve for X would shift to right if price of Y increases. Over here, the price of X is not changing, it is constant. But since they are substitute goods, if the price of Y increases, then people will shift to X, and as a result, the demand for X increase. And if the demand curve, if the price of Y decreases, then the demand curve is going to shift leftward. The second one is demand for a commodity in relation to price of the complementary goods. Let us consider car and petrol as complementary goods. Let cars be the commodity demanded, of which the demand curve is D1. Increase in price of complementary goods. Initially, if price of car is OP1, number of cars purchased is OT1. Now suppose this price remains constant but the price of petrol increases. As a result, the customer would tend to buy less cars even when price of the car is constant. This is a situation of backward shift in demand curve from D1 to D2. So whenever the price of petrol rises, even if the price of car is same, people would try to avoid their purchase of car for some time, and they would not demand more of cars, and as a result the demand for car will fall from D1 to D2. The second case is decrease in price of complementary goods. If price of petrol decreases, people will have the tendency to buy more cars even when price of cars is constant. This is a situation of forward shift in demand curve from D1 to D2. So even in this situation, the price of car is same, but even then, when price of petrol decreases, people start to prefer to purchase these cars, and as a result, there is a favorable change in demand. The demand increases, and as a result, there will be a rightward shift in the demand curve from D1 to D2. Therefore, if X and Y are complementary goods and price of X remains constant, demand curve for X would shift forward if price of Y reduces. Demand curve for X would shift backward if price of Y increases. So over here, this forward refers to rightward and backward refers to leftward. So today we have studied about cross price effect, which refers to the effect of change in the price of commodity X on the demand for a commodity Y when X and Y are related goods. X and Y are either substitute goods or complementary goods. So these are a few assignment questions. The first question is, what is an inferior good? In what manner is the demand curve of such a good affected when income of the consumer increases? Use diagram. So just now you studied about cross price effect. Similar is the income effect. You have already studied about it. So you need to draw a graph. First of all, you need to explain what are inferior goods, and you need to draw a graph representing what will happen when there is an increase in the demand of the consumer. As you know, the demand for inferior goods and the income of the consumer, they are in inverse relationship, and as a result, when there is an increase in the income of the consumer, there will be a decrease in the demand for inferior goods, even at the same price, even if the price of that inferior good remains same, and as a result it will lead to leftward shift of demand curve. So you need to make a graph and you need to explain that graph in your own words. The second question is, how is the demand for a good affected by the rise in prices of related goods? So you have just now studied how it is affected, so you need to explain it in your own words. The third question is, explain with the help of a diagram the effect of the following changes on the demand for a commodity. An unfavorable change in taste of the buyers for a commodity. So whenever there is a favorable change, there is a rightward shift. So in this case, since this is an unfavorable change, there will be a leftward shift in the demand curve. The second part says, a fall in the income of its buyer if the commodity is normal. So I have already told you that there is a direct relationship between normal goods and income of the consumer. If there is a fall in the income of the consumer, there will be a fall in the demand for normal goods. So for this question, you will be preparing a graph showing a leftward shift in the demand curve. So that is it for today. Thank you.